Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we got it. 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 And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Real Raging Kel channel. I am Richard Jensen, and I am coming to you live from my ridiculously overpriced studio apartment. And today we're doing a Physical Media Saturday. We're going to be talking about, this time around, my 3 favorite 2 in the morning movies. Now let me take a moment to define that for you first. A two in the morning. Let me explain. Let's say it's 2 in the morning. You wake up, you can't sleep, insomnia, terrors of the day, that sort of thing, and you can't fall back to sleep. So you go to the kitchen, you fix yourself a snack, you get a piece of pie or a piece of cake, or you fix yourself a sandwich, you make yourself some tea or some cocoa, and you put on a movie to help you kind of relax. That's a 2 in the morning movie. A 2 in the morning movie is just a warm blanket. It's something you've seen probably 10, 15 times, but it doesn't matter. It's late. You can't fall back to sleep because the voices in your head are screaming at the top of their lungs. And you just need to unwind. A 2 in the morning movie is comfort food. It is a warm blanket draped over you. And today I am going to discuss 3 films that are comfort movies for me that I happen to have on 4K. So, let's get started. First film up is John McTiernan's The Hunt for Red October. Probably one of the best Cold War thrillers ever made. This was made in 1990 by John McTiernan. He is coming off success of Die Hard. He had actually tried to option the book himself, but got outbid, and he ended up getting the job directing it when I forget which studio was this that did this. Yep, Paramount. God, it was Paramount. When Paramount got the rights for it, and he went in both hands. He absolutely loved the novel. It appealed to. One of his hobbies apparently is military history, and this was the sort of thing that absolutely tickled his pickle. The script is by, let me double check this here, is by Larry Ferguson and Donald Stewart. It should be noted that there also has some additional writing by the legendary John Milius, who came on board after Sean Connery got cast as Ramius after Klaus Maria Brandauer, who was originally going to play the role, had to drop out. But it is absolutely a first-rate. It's not technically an action movie. It's because it's a submarine movie. There's more of a chess element to it, more of a, if I can be allowed to say, it's a little more. It's a little more math-like. It's a little more. It's about people look using grids to find their locations underwater. I'm making it sound boring, but it's not. Basic plot: the Russians are testing a new submarine that has a silent drive on it. Alec Baldwin is Jack Ryan, a CIA analyst, not a field guy. He only writes books, and he realizes that the person driving the ship, Captain Ramius, played by Sean Connery, is going to defect and turn the sub over to him, and the whole movie is basically him trying to convince people that hey, this guy's trying to defect, he's not trying to blow us up, while Ramius is trying to the United States without getting blown up. As I said before, it's a solid thriller, and it's a great stacked cast. You got, starting with Alec Baldwin, who's really good in the movie. And the interesting thing is, when McTiernan cast him, he just wanted a regular leading man who could just say the lines and look stoic. But Baldwin at that time was way too interesting an actor just to go with the bland leading man thing. So he kind of gave him a little more edge. He made him a little more excitable. I think Griffith Newman said it best when he and David Sims talked about this a few years ago when they did their McTiernan miniseries on Blank Check, is that this is a guy who's trying too hard. He has the energy of a graduate student trying to show his work. And Baldwin has actually said in recent years that if he had to do that movie all over again, he'd do less. And honestly, that thing about that performance is him trying so hard is kind of what gives it its juice. I mean, Harrison Ford did the next two Jack Ryan movies for Paramount, and he's good in them because, you know, it's Harrison Ford. He's the man. But Baldwin brings that kind of try-hard energy to the role, and it makes it a little more interesting, little edgy. I like that. I think it is one of my favorite Baldwin performances. It's not as good as, say, Glengarry Glen Ross, where he comes in for one scene and completely murders, but it's a good performance, and if you like Alec Baldwin, I'd check it out. As I said before, the second of the two leads is Sean Connery. Kind of came in last minute because, as I said before, Klaus Maria Brandauer kind of was going to do it, but then he dropped out for another project, and they literally had a week before shooting to get Connery on board. At that point, they then had to bring in John Milius to kind of, you know, beef up his role. Well, a lot of the big speeches that Connery has in this film were written by John Milius, and they are absolutely terrific. Of course, Milius would go on to help write the next couple of Jack Ryan movies. But it is, and it's McTiernan's directing again, and he's kind of in the zone on this one. He knows what he's doing. The best way I could describe McTiernan's style here is it's very fluid camera work. It's not that kind of jittery Scorsese during his cocaine era, but it's very smooth, very flavorful. And Connery, as we discussed a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Murder on the Orient Express, is not an actor who suffers fools. And if he feels a director doesn't know what he's doing, he will be vocal about it. And McTiernan tells the story that about after the first week of shooting, Connery comes up to him and says, "Good night, boy." And McTiernan at that point realized that this was his way of extending warmth to him. That's when he knew he had gained Connery's trust. Connery knew he was in good hands with this one. The rest of the cast is really good. You got Larry Ferguson, who was one of the film screenwriters, plays a what's the name of that character? I just saw the film last night, but I'm blank on what exactly. He's kind of one of the heads of the ships that's tracking the Red October. The captain of that ship is played by John Glenn, who is absolutely spectacular. Everybody in this movie is good, but Scott Glenn is kind of amazing. He kind of dials into the quietness of the role, because apparently during his prep work for the movie discovered that submarine commanders don't yell. They don't raise their voices. They stay very internalized, and they keep their power. And I'm sorry, I'm flailing a little bit. Let me get some water here. It's a very quiet, subdued performance. You got Courtney Vance as the sonar guy on that ship, and he is absolutely terrific. He is dialed in. You got Richard Jordan, the late great Richard Jordan, playing an NSA consultant. You got, oh God, who else is it? Rick Ducommun has one scene where he kills as a helicopter pilot. Fred Thompson, the late Fred Thompson, brilliant actor. Not a great politician, but a solid actor. He just kind of rumbles into the role and just plays it for all it's worth. He is terrific, and again, it's just a really solid cast. The one cast member you're gonna have an issue with is Jeffrey Jones. Now, Jones is good in the movie, but you know, there was that thing a few years ago where we find out that he was kind of a kitty diddler. So if you have to kind of shine past his scene when he comes up, it's fine. He's only in it for one scene. You can speed past that very quickly. He's the guy who establishes that the sub is using a new Caterpillar drive, which is that can run silent. It's a nice scene and he does it well, but again, if you got a problem with him for that legitimate reason, you can shine past it. And I will also say that the last half hour of this movie is probably one of the best last half hours of any movie ever made. It just, from the moment the sub surfaces and the plan to get the sub out, grab the sub goes, it is just pure butter. It is fun, it is solid, it is suspenseful, and it has one of the most satisfying endings you will ever see in an action film. Now, this particular 4K, this came out from Paramount a few years ago. It's bare bones. The only two extras on it is a brief featurette about the film called what's it called? Beneath the Surface. And it's also got a John McTiernan commentary track, which I absolutely recommend. It's a little gappy because McTiernan's not one of those guys who will motor mouth through an entire movie. He will just pick the points where he wants to talk, and he will talk. But it's worth it because McTiernan was and is probably one of the smartest guys to ever do it. I can recommend it highly. Cannot recommend it highly enough. It is a really good movie. If you have never seen it, get the 4K. Yeah, you can get it on streaming, but again, 4K, physical media, that's the way to go, and that's what we're about here. Next movie, 1993's The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones, directed by Andrew Davis. This was actually based on the This was based on the TV series of the 60s starring David Janssen as Dr. Richard Kimball, a man who's convicted for the murder of his wife, but is actually innocent because, as he said, his wife was killed by a one-armed man. Show ran for several seasons, and the last episode of that series was one of the highest rated TV shows for years. I mean, that had that record forever. I've never seen the series. I hear it's very good, but I just haven't seen it. I don't think it's available on streaming yet. The movie is available, and it is terrific. Hang on a second. Again, made in 1993, Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones in his Oscar-winning role. probably one of the best action movies of the 90s. Directed by Andrew Davis, who got his start making documentary films and then kind of segued into making fictional, making theatrical features. His big film, he had his film before this was Under Siege with Steven Seagal, but the big movie that I've seen that he did before that kind of put him on the map was Code of Silence, known to many of us as the one good Chuck Norris movie. Do not at me. I am not in the mood. I have issues with Chuck Norris, but honestly, that film is absolutely terrific. I absolutely highly recommend it if you can find it. Code of Silence. The Fugitive is also really good. It has a banger of an opening where we discover that Kimball discovers his wife is murdered, and it's the way the opening is set up is really good because it's got 15 minutes of exposition that you have to get through before you get to the first big set piece of the movie. But Davis does something interesting here, is he spaces out the opening credits for the whole 15 minutes that they're laying that particular pipe, because there's something about something psychological about when you're watching a movie and you're watching the opening credits, that the film doesn't quite start until the opening credits are done. And by stretching out to 15 minutes while laying all of this narrative pipe, you honestly feel like you're getting a taste of the movie before the movie actually begins proper. It's a kind of a weird psychological thing. I can't explain it, but if you see the movie, it does work. And as I said before, Andrew Davis directs, and he originally came out of documentaries, so a lot of this movie has kind of that cinema verite. But he's not as jangly a filmmaker as, say, William Friedkin. It's kind of a more a slightly more commercialized version of Friedkin. But it still works. So the premise is Kimball's found guilty for his wife. He ends up escaping when there's an accident involving the bus he's being taken to the prison on, and he has to run. And Tommy Lee Jones plays the federal marshal who has to try to track him down. And the minute Tommy Lee Jones comes on screen and says, well, what do we have here? You are in the pocket with this guy. He is terrific. He is dry, he is funny, but he is driven. And he's surrounded by a great cast, including Daniel Reback and Joe Pantoliano. Joey Pants is in this movie, and he is terrific. Everybody's good in this movie. Now, it was kind of a chaotic production, because when they were in the middle of getting this thing done, they signed Harrison Ford on. They only had him for a limited time because he was already signed on to a couple other movies, so they only had this brief window in, and they didn't have time to lock the script in. So they literally were writing this thing as you're going around, which, let me tell you something, that is not an ideal situation, because generally speaking, speaking for myself, I prefer, if you're going to make a movie, to make sure the script is locked, it's tight, you got it down. It's a very dangerous way to make a movie, because, you make the wrong decision, and the plot, you miss stuff, plot holes get good. But it still works, because Davis worked with the co-writer Jeb Stewart, who had also gone through this same sort of chaotic production with Die Hard from McTiernan back in '88. And they were able to kind of lock in the plot while sketching it out, and then the actors would kind of take the script pages they got, vamp around them. Like the dialogue on the page would actually be fairly simplistic, and then the actors would just kind of, come up with their own dialogue for it. Again, it's not necessarily a way I would make a movie like that. I'd prefer to have the script locked before starting. But one of the great things about Davis is, because of his documentary his experience making documentaries, the man managed to. Oh hey, Blake, didn't see you there for a second. Seriously, Sidekick? Oh, I've never seen Sidekick, so I can't trust it. That strikes me as kind of a kiddie film. But you know what? I'll let you have Sidekicks. I'm not going to get into an argument about Chuck Norris about this. By the way, I'm sorry I didn't see you there for a second. Anyway, we're getting back to. Now I've lost my train of thought. Thanks, Blake. But thank you for stopping by. It's good to see you. So they basically had to write the script while they were doing it. While they were making the movie, and it's dangerous, but if you have professionals who know their job and are kind of used to a certain amount of chaos, you can get a good movie out of it. McTiernan, the same thing happened to McTiernan on Die Hard, and that worked out fine too. So it can be done. It's for a certain kind of director who's fine with the things being unsettled. And the film, by the way, was shot by the legendary Michael Chapman, who is one of the great cinematographers of the 20th century. This is the guy who started out with Scorsese. He shot Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, The Last Waltz. I'm going to take a little segue for a second. I'm going to talk a little bit. One of my favorite Michael Chapman movies, my favorite Michael Chapman stories is about The Last Waltz. So please forgive me this brief digression. So the shooting, it's one of the great live concert movies. If you've never seen it, it's the band doing their last show in San Francisco after a lifetime of touring because, as they said, they couldn't take the road anymore. So it's a great concert movie. But one of their great songs, "The Wait," was apparently something went wrong while they were doing that, and they couldn't get it on film properly. So they end up shooting it a few days later in a soundstage in San Francisco, and it's a really nice version of the song. They do it with the Staple Singers, and it is just amazing. But apparently, Chapman ends up getting into an argument with Scorsese because of the lighting scheme he chose for that particular song. The quote, I believe, was, "These are Catholic colors! This is a Protestant song and you're using Catholic colors!" That is dedication to the craft. But apparently, I guess Chapman didn't have that great of a time working on this film because he was kind of going back and forth between doing regular documentary style lighting, which is, no artificial light sources, just using available light, and then using theatrical lights for certain scenes, like let's say the scene in the tunnel where Tommy Lee Jones is chasing Harrison Ford, where you have these big shafts of light through the pipes. And it drove Chapman nuts. The whole time he's on the film, he's saying, I hate this, I don't like doing this, you've got the wrong guy for this. And Chapman himself was kind of a last-minute replacement because the previous DP had been fired by Davis, so he ends up taking the job because, as he said, they sent me a truckload of money. Anyway, the guy has a miserable experience on the film, but also ends up getting an Oscar nomination for it. And as he said in an interview, he said, that only goes to prove nobody knows anything. So yeah, it's a really, really good movie. A great cast. Jerome Crabb is in it. He's terrific. Very young Jane Lynch pops up for a few scenes. Julianne Moore. Now, the interesting story about Julianne Moore is she's in the film for a couple scenes as a nurse at a hospital that Kimball is using to try to find the one-armed man. But originally in the script, she was going to take him home, help him out, and, maybe have a little... But that stuff ended up getting cut before filming started because they realized, Kimball's looking for the murder of his late wife. If he's futzing around with this cutie patootie nurse, that's going to undercut things. So as a result, Julianne Moore ended up having the role cut, but she still got paid the price for the full supporting role she was going to get, and that's why she has her name is so prominent in the opening credits. So, you know, good work. And it didn't hurt her. She's good in a couple of scenes. The film is a big hit, and she goes on to bigger stuff, so she's fine. She's terrific. But yeah, and now the 4K of The Fugitive first of all, solid transfer. This is probably as good as the film has ever looked on physical media. It is absolutely gorgeous. As I said before, Michael Chapman did get an Oscar nomination for his photography for this film, so it looks really good, especially if you got a nice big screen. Extra-wise, it's decent. It's got a few featurettes to it. A couple making of things. There's a commentary track by Davis and Tommy Lee Jones. Well, they advertise as Andrew Davis and Lee Jones, but it's like Tommy Lee Jones only pops in every 10-15 minutes. It's mostly Davis, but it's fascinating stuff. He's very open about his process, and he talks about how he loved shooting in Chicago because he's a Chicago boy. In fact, Chapman actually said in an interview that the reason Chicago looks so good is because Davis is from Chicago and he knew where all the angles were. That was, he said that's Andrew's eye, not mine. So yeah, it's a really good 4K. It's from Warner's. They generally do very good work with their transfers. So if you've got a 4K player and a really good screen, this is the way to see the movie. Yes, you could do streaming, but you know, the bit rates on streaming is nowhere as good as a disc. Again, that's what we're about here, physical media. Okay, last movie we're going to discuss, and the last movie we are going to discuss is John Frankenheimer's Ronin, starring Robert De Niro, Sean Reno, Stellan Skarsgård, Sean Bean, Jonathan Pryce, and Natasha McElhone. And I'm probably butchering the poor woman's name, and I apologize for that. This is a kind of a post-Cold War / secret Irish Troubles movie, and I'm kind of a spoiler for the ending, but I apologize for that. But basic premise is this: the Irish hire certain Irish people hire De Niro and a bunch of mercenaries to get this case. We don't know what's in the case. We never know what's in the case, but we got to get the case. That's it. That's the plot. They're basically hired to steal luggage, and it is. And that sounds boring. It's a MacGuffin. It is what it is. But it is also one of the great, tightest thrillers that John Frankenheimer ever made. Now, it should be noted that Frankenheimer came on this film fresh off the insane hell that was the making of The Island of Dr. Moreau. And if you know anything about the making of that movie starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, that production was a nightmare. It was originally going to be directed by Richard Stanley from his own script. He kind of imploded. Frankenheimer comes in to mop up. Brando's being Brando. Val Kilmer's kind of going through a major league movie star asshole phase, so he's no fun to be around. And the whole production was just a insane nightmare. So you can comes on this production, and he's just probably delighted that everybody's behaving themselves on this movie. And I'm going to say a quick thing about Robert De Niro. The man is legendarily one of the great method actors. This is a guy who lost a ton of weight for Raging Bull. Does incredible amount of research for every role he does. When he did Meet the Fockers, he actually consulted with an actual CIA operative to learn for basically what's the role of an angry father-in-law who happens to be a CIA agent. I've never seen the movie, but I understand it's very good. And the thing I will say about De Niro is I have never heard anything bad about the guy. He's never behaved badly on the set, to the best of my knowledge. Always an absolute professional, even though he's very into method. Compare that with Jared freaking Leto, who used condoms and dead rats to his cast members during Suicide Squad because he was trying to go into that insane Joker mode. Most method acting nowadays is bullshit. And that's why De Niro is the GOAT. Because yes, he'll go method, but he won't be an asshole about it. So, respect. Had to get that rant out of the way. Yeah. Yeah. Now the script was co-written by an uncredited David Mamet, and it definitely has his cadence to it. It has that kind of very low to the, very clipped, very compressed dialogue. But the reason that Mamet doesn't have a credit on this is because the originals, he was working from a draft from a previous writer, and he insisted, and he felt all the work he had done on it, he deserved sole credit. Should have seen what was going to happen to him afterwards coming, but you know. So he ends up taking a pseudonym for it, and that's fine. We can still tell it's Mamet because it's that Mamet dialogue. It is good. And the other thing about this movie that is absolutely amazing is the car stuff. Frankenheimer loved cars. Cars were kind of a hobby of his, so anytime he could deal with cars in a movie, he kind of went for it. I'm going to recommend another Frankenheimer movie to you called Grand Prix, made in 1960. It was on Criterion a while back. I don't know if it's still on Criterion. Check it. If it is, you should check it out. It's really good. I mean, the script is a little soapy for my taste, but the race sequences, which Frankenheimer designed with the legendary Saul Bass, put some respect on his name when you speak it, are absolutely spectacular. The car stuff, he's always been good with car stuff, and I strongly suspect that when he finished the big chase that comes before the third act, where they're driving from a post office in Paris, when he finished that sequence, I would not surprise me to discover that he sent that thing to Friedkin and said, "Top that motherfucker." It's that good of a chase. The car stuff is incredible. The action stuff is very well handled. And again, just a really stacked cast of people. Stellan Skarsgård is great in it. Sean Reno and De Niro make a good double act with each other. In fact, I would be incredibly surprised if there wasn't some De Niro Reno /fic that came out of this movie, because those two are really good together and they have a good solid partnership. And this is a film made by professionals, kind of about professionals. It's about people who are very good at their jobs, except for the couple that aren't. That's Sean Bean's role in this. He's only in the film for like the first third of the movie. He plays a mercenary who is jittery and nervous as hell. And honestly, it shows some restraint on De Niro's character that he doesn't end up getting capped in the head, taking a shot to the head at this, because he, not being Bean is good in the movie, but the character is just a complete walking disaster area. He's one of those guys who he'll sound off and say, "Oh, I know this, I know that, I might look at me." And De Niro's just the quiet guy who says, "Let's just do the job. Let's just do the job." If there is one thread throughout this entire movie, it is a celebration of professionals who are good at their jobs. Now, you could argue that those particular jobs might be kind of dubious because they're all mercenaries, ex-CIA, ex-intelligence guys. But you have to respect the professionalism that they bring to it, and I think that's one of the things that this film celebrates. One of the cast members I want to mention quickly, because I'm usually not a big fan of his, is Michael Lonsdale. Now, I run hot and cold on Lonsdale. I still contend that his youth Drax in Moonraker is probably one of the most boring of the Bond villains. I mean, I'm not crazy about Moonraker that much anyway. I think it's the Spy Who Loved Me with some of the more interesting stuff sanded off of it. But that's a conversation for another time if I ever get my hands on the Watcher more 4Ks when those come out. We'll talk about Moonraker. I got some shit to say about Moonraker. But Lonsdale's really good in this. He plays a guy who helps De Niro get a bullet out of his gut. And later he and De Niro have a nice little scene while he's painting these little samurai figurines and putting them up in a diorama, and he tells the story about the 47 Ronin, who were famously became king when their master was killed, and they spent years plotting the revenge, finally managed to avenge their master, and then committed ritualized seppuku on the enemy's grounds. It's a lovely scene. Lonsdale does it well. And the final moment where he explains to Nero what seppuku is just pure French kiss. As I said before, everybody in this movie is good. Natasha McCann, I hope to God I'm getting her name right. I didn't check the pronunciations about this. I forgot to mention the name of the one-armed man in The Fugitive, who's actually a terrific actor, but I can never pronounce his last name correctly, and I do not want to dishonor him by screwing it up. I'll just say Babylon 5, Ambassador Jakar. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, where was I? Anyway, she's terrific in it. She's basically the person who's trying to get the team together and get the job done. And she matched the whole, and this is kind of early in her career. She's just starting to make a name for herself. This was I think maybe a couple years before she did Solaris with Soderbergh, which she's really good in, and I absolutely recommend that movie if you can find it. It's terrific. But she's really good, and she has to hold her own with some of the biggest swinging dicks in the business, and she holds her own. She's terrific. Anyway, the film is really good. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's both kind of a post-Cold War movie / secret Irish Troubles movie, but it is incredibly well made. It is and I think that's the thing that runs through all three movies I've been discussing here today, is they're all made by professionals who know what they're doing and are engaged with the material, who want to be there. Sometimes you'll see a film made by professionals who just don't want to be there. It's like, okay, this material is a piece of shit, but we're gonna go through it because I gotta make this many days to get my insurance through my union. And there are times when you see a film that is beautifully crafted, but for whatever reason doesn't work. If you've ever seen, say, David Lane's Ryan's Daughter, which is impeccably crafted, because David Lane was one of the great craftsmen of cinema, but that film is fundamentally broken in a number of ways. And I'm not going to get into it fully here. If you go to my Letterboxd account, I actually have a report up there, somewhere in there. Also, you can find that in my links. Hang on a second. Let me go ahead and put my link list in the chat there. But these are all three of these films are made by professionals who know what they're doing and are fully engaged with the material, and that's kind of why they work. That and luck. You always need a dollop of good luck, because these are also films that could go with probably 5 bad decisions away from not working. And that happens. That's what filmmaking is. It's not an exact science. A lot of it is just pure luck. And you have to kind of occasionally have to embrace the chaos. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. We've talked about our 3 movies. Thank you for joining me. We'll be back next week. I am going to... And I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week, so I'll let you know when that happens. Anyway, you folks have a terrific evening. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you later. Have a good night.